Hey there, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today on the program, I speak with Chris from Fair Game Beverage Company, which is a winery and distillery in Pittsboro, North Carolina. It's a very interesting facility, and we get into why it's very interesting. But another reason why it's interesting is because it's located at Lorax Lane. That's right, there's a Dr. Seuss reference in the actual address. So I highly recommend that you go check out Fair Game Beverage Company. They've got a lot of events going on there, and Chris is a good person, and he's got doing some cool things down there. So this is a very interesting podcast, and we cover it all. But speaking of interesting things, I'm actually off this weekend, so I don't have anything to really plug this weekend. Other than the usual, make sure you check out Tree Monstrous Comedy Wednesdays at the Tremont Music Hall. And also don't forget about the Charlotte Comedy Theater performing at the NC Music Factory every Friday and Saturday. And also, if there's any local wrestling in your area, make sure you support it. Even if I'm not there or somebody else is there or somebody I don't like, which is a small list, maybe a long list, and so in some people's minds, but actually it's a very short list. But just support local wrestling. It's happening in all corners of the country and all corners of the Southeast. So make sure you check out some local wrestling and local comedy. It's there, folks. Just hunt it down. I promise you. But if you're in the Charlotte area, don't forget about Tree Monsters Comedy Wednesdays and the Charlotte Comedy Theater. Anyways, if you want to support me, make sure you follow me on social media. I am available on Twitter at @ManScoutManning, and on Instagram @ManScoutManning. If you have any questions about the podcast, make sure you email me at jake@sslshow.com. Or if you want to book me for an upcoming wrestling event, make sure you email me at manscoutmanning@yahoo.com. Anyways, let's jump into this very interesting podcast with Chris from Fair Game Beverage Company, here on Stranger in a Southern Land. Sitting here with Chris, the head distiller here at Fair Game Beverage Company. Chris, thank you so much for sitting down in what quite possibly is my favorite room of the distillery. And so thank you very much for your time today.
Of course, Jake. Great to have you over.
The first thing I think we have to explain to everybody that's listening or watching is that the address of this place is 193 or 63 Lorax Drive.
Yep.
Lorax, like Dr.
Lorax Lane.
Lorax Lane.
Yeah.
And it's a very unique facility, a random amount of buildings and kind of maybe extra security and weird things about it. Just what did this place used to be?
Yeah, so this is a great example of kind of industrial evolution, I think. This originally was built in the 80s to do military alloys. Mm-hmm. So it was in business for maybe 10 years, and Cold War ended, and then they abandoned it. So we're kind of back in the woods. We're just about 2 miles out of, the middle of downtown Pittsboro.
Yeah, because Pittsboro is a little bit outside of Raleigh, and this is just a little bit outside of it. So
yeah.
And you hit like a little bit of gravel road, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and something that's like Lorax Lane. So a very nice and friendly place. And then you look at it, it's like, no, something used to be here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very glad that you said it was military based. I thought it was child labor or some other cult-esque thing going on back here. So the fact that the federal government was doing something like, well, maybe that might not have been a good thing either. But, but obviously you're using it for something I think everybody can get behind. Yeah,
it's been a cool. I'll just tell you real quickly the history, because folks drive in here and they're always like, "What is going on back here?"
It's unique.
But yeah, so it was abandoned for about 10 years after the mid '90s when it closed, and then Piedmont Biofuels, who's our neighbor next door, moved in, and they're doing renewable biodiesel fuel from cooking oil. Mm-hmm. So they've been in business for maybe 10 years now, and there's kind of a group of different businesses have moved into this industrial park, and we've got an organic farm, we've got a guy making natural bug spray and herbicides, and we've got a nonprofit that does renewable energy and local food work. So kind of a pretty diverse group of ecologically minded businesses, I think you'd say. And we're the first liquor company inside the gates, but so it's been kind of fun. We got our tasting room and everything down here, and it's kind of it's a neat place to be. We throw concerts and things like that, so it's a little bit out of the ordinary back here.
Yeah, I saw the schedule and stuff like that, or the things you got coming up and stuff like that, and also too coming in. Like I saw some of those, like the bio energy, and then like there's a honeybee stand,
Yeah.
and then people farming for really weird reasons or whatever. So it's it's a very cool facility. So
Yeah.
just coming and seeing, just coming in the tasting room just to see this facility is impressive enough as it is.
Yeah.
But anyways, how did you get interested in this distilling and stuff like that? How did you come across that?
Yeah, I studied up at App State in Boone, and I did the renewable energy program up there. So I actually had a career in biofuels before this. But back in college, started homebrewing and really loved doing that. And then was doing biofuels, which is relates to distilling, but more in the industrial ethanol kind of form. But the whole time I kind of had hobbies, like I was growing sorghum molasses with a friend of mine on his farm and making molasses out of sweet sorghum plants, and just really liked that connection with the agriculture, liked that kind of tangible production slash craft type of thing. So I actually I love rums and am really into local food, and realized that you couldn't grow sugarcane up here in North Carolina. So I was like, well, what if we made a sorghum rum? And of course, I started tinkering around with that, and found that you could make a pretty nice tasting rum out of sorghum. So started messing around with that, and then a couple of folks, our winemaker and one of the people who owns this property here, started talking about opening a distillery, and they called on me to kind of bring it online and run the distilling side of things.
Where did that passion for like growing stuff, and you grew up on a farm, or
no? I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, so definitely a suburban kid. Had no exposure.
Where that passion for farming and agriculture and just
I think it might have been from growing up in the suburbs of Atlanta and just being so disconnected from things. I went to college and traveled a lot, and just started. I went to Europe for a little while in my early 20s and visited some wineries, and just really just loved that connection to the land and the ability to kind of make something. And it's so the opposite of that like suburban sprawl kind of thing where everything is unnatural and you don't know where anything comes from. So just real strong interest in being connected to what it is you're consuming and what you're bringing in around you and all of that. And to me, distilling it's just an awesome combination of science and craft and flavor and fun times and being able to work with farmers and all of that. So it struck a lot of all the right notes for me.
It seems like, and especially you were in the middle. Like Boone's a very nice place, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, so you can kind of be out there in the land. And
there's definitely a history of moonshining up there.
Exactly. There's that. Of course, it's a college town, so there's always a history of alcohol.
Yeah.
So this idea of all just kind of meshes together.
Yeah.
So actually, I just did a podcast with somebody who ran a winery that went to Boone.
Oh,
so
cool.
There's something about that area that makes you want to make your own alcohol for whatever reason.
I mean, the northwestern part of North Carolina, they used to call it the Lost Province, and back in pre-prohibition days, there were just moonshiners, bootleggers. They had no access to markets. It was just a long haul for them to get down the mountain to Hickory or Charlotte or whatever. So the farmers up there had to be really self-sufficient. There's a lot of folks making liquor. There's a lot of folks against liquor. It's kind of a fascinating history with moonshining and just with self-sufficiency. So back then, I think they were the first counties to vote in prohibition, but they also had the most bootleggers. So it was like they were making the liquor and they were trying to ban the liquor, and I think it financially worked out for everybody. But it definitely, when you go up to the mountains, there is a big self-sufficiency. Folks being interested in doing that, and you kind of have to because you're not close to any real production centers.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were just talking about how you had a preference towards rum. Like, why preference to rum and not whiskey or some of your other spirits?
It probably led from the sorghum. And realizing that there are two plants they're in the same family, sorghum and sugarcane. You process them the same ways. So I really kind of was making that connection. I like whiskey too, but I was working with sorghum and really just fascinated with sorghum as like a historical sweetener. And
that was the thing that intrigued you.
That was what really kind of grabbed me as like the ingredient. I do actually. Got plans to work on a malt whiskey here, but I don't really have any plans to do a corn whiskey for whatever reason. I think sorghum inspired me, and because it is similar to rum, I mean, there's some really great rums out there, and rum in itself is a really interesting history.
Okay. Now, from college, did you go straight into distilling, or what was that time period between that?
Yeah, no, I worked in solar and renewable and biofuels. I actually worked here at Piedmont Biofuels for a number of years, and then I started doing design build, building reactors for farms and schools and small producers, and then spent a couple years doing solar electric installs and doing electrical work. So kind of had this technical background on that side.
Do you enjoy it?
I did, yeah. I was tired of being covered in grease or spending my afternoons on a south-facing roof. So
it's far more construction than it is science.
At the end of the day, it really is. You're up there with your tools on the roof, and you're doing good work, but it's hot as hell.
And you really can't enjoy kind of the fruits of your labor in a sense. I mean, you did it, oh great, and then you move on,
Right.
and then you're not enjoying what you're getting out of that solar power, or at least here in distilling, you can take a little sip.
Yeah.
That's probably. So when you decided this distillery starting up, what was the tipping point for you? You said that they were interested in possibly having a distillery here, and like what was the tipping point for you? Like, yeah, I want to do this, but was there ever a moment like I can do this? Because that's a very big undertaking, especially with all the legal aspect, the facility, and everything else.
Yeah, thankfully we had a good group of partners. So Andy is our winemaker, and he's of course been through all of that TTB and ABC, federal and state, permitting with his winery. So he luckily handled most of that work. And I was kind of brought on. I was able to do, with my kind of construction background, able to do a lot of the retrofit of this building, bringing it up to food grade standards and installing the wiring and compressed air and all that kind of stuff.
What was the biggest challenge with that? Like, what was probably the most difficult thing to do? Because like I said, this is a facility just sitting in the middle of nowhere for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, we really, this building did require a lot of work. I had to finish the floors. I had to, put in some new electrical lines. We've got 1 foot thick concrete walls here, so core drilling, doing all of that. I helped install the boiler. I helped install that wiring. Just keeping the drive to do all that stuff like every day on your own, I guess, it might have been the toughest part. But I mean, at the end of the day, just getting into production and kind of like realizing that now it's a go. You've been doing this kind of in your garage for years, and now it's like it's showtime. I think that was kind of a big moment.
Mm-hmm. Now, was the plan always for it to be a distillery and a winery, or was it?
Yeah, I think we weren't quite sure. It's in North Carolina. There's some pretty tricky laws, and it felt like the wine was going to be a easier sell, at least as far as dealing with the regulations and everything. The wine has done well, but I think we're seeing more folks are excited about the distillery side of things. So we're boosting production on the spirits this year, and we were kind of looking at like a 2/3 wine, 1/3 spirits mix, and now it's probably going to be a little more like half and half.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing that makes you guys very unique and made me really want to come up here is the fact that you are also dealing with the distillery and the winery. Because there's a ton of wineries in North Carolina, and breweries. It's even more populated.
Yeah.
But distilleries is such a small, niche, unique thing here in North Carolina, probably mostly because of the regulation and stuff like that and all the hurdles you have to climb over.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to make direct sales. Everything goes through the ABC system. It's in some ways that's nice. In other ways, it's tricky. I mean, I actually was a little late to our meeting today because we're doing a Raleigh restaurant convention show next week, and just for me to pour samples of my liquor at this convention, I've got to go send him a $50 permit, go get my background checked, go do all. It's just so many hoops just to be able to pour samples. I won't even be selling bottles at this event. So, just things like that.
Legally, you can't.
Legally, I can't. Yeah. So a brewery could go and they don't need to do anything. They've got their permit. They can.
Yeah,
go
people
and pour
could
beer.
sit down at the bar at the brewery and have 6 or 8 beers and then walk out with like a 18 pack or whatever they want, where your distilleries in North Carolina, they can't even buy.
Yeah, I can pour you a 1/4 ounce of each of my products and can't sell you a bottle. Although that's about to change October 1st.
Okay, so what's it changing to?
So we lobbied pretty hard, the North Carolina Distillers Association. We spent about 4 years lobbying on this, and what we got was 1 bottle per customer per year. So you come on a tour, you can buy 1 bottle, and then next year you can come back and buy a second bottle.
Okay.
So it's certainly not the moon, but it's a little bit closer.
How are they requiring you to keep track to make sure that you don't sell 2 bottles in 1 year? Like, what's the process on that?
Right. I mean, it's the same thing as current. We can get inspected by the ALE, and
Yeah, you
so
can
we'll
have
be
somebody
keeping.
buy another week, and you have to remember.
We'll be keeping records, I think, of
Okay.
driver's licenses.
Okay.
They're still actually formulating the rules. We got to be, we've got 2 weeks, so I haven't even seen the actual rules yet. But.
Why would you think it'd be so difficult for them to change the rules to match like something like a Kentucky? Because I understood why they probably had the rules in place because of all the bootlegging that had gone on in this state. But why is there such difficulty now to just make the big change and make the big jump, you think?
I think it's fascinating. I think North Carolina is a unique state in many ways, including our liquor laws. Like I was saying earlier, North Carolina was actually the first state to vote in prohibition and the last state to vote it out. So we've had a long history of teetotalers, and it's kind of funny because back in prohibition, the bootleggers were kind of working with the religious groups because the bootleggers actually wanted prohibition because they were going to make more money if they had total control over their sales, although illegally. And now it's it's us against the alcohol distributors and the religious right still interested in preventing that. They're really worried about losing the control of liquor sales. They really like that liquor is sold through the controlled ABC system.
Because everything you make distilled, you have to send straight to Raleigh and then ship out.
Yeah.
And they ship out from there.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of a nice system for us because it means I'm not sending a truck up to Asheville.
Logistically,
or
it's easy for
Wilmington
you. You put it in one bulk shipment to one particular place. You're not sending it to a liquor store in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and then another one to Asheville, and then another one to Greenville. Or
yeah, and it enables me to basically be my own. I'm not the distributor, but I'm the broker. So it works out for us in a lot of ways. And we are overall, I think, supportive of the ABC system because I think, for the most part, it helps North Carolina distillers. But this inability to sell to our customers when they come for a tour, it's basically me with my meager little facility here up against Jim Beam and Suntory and Diageo and all these giant multi-billion-dollar, liquor companies and their marketing budgets when you go to the ABC store. So it's a tough road to compete against those guys.
Well, especially since a tour is basically like a 20, 30, 45-minute commercial of your facility. And if anybody's going to buy your product, it is the 5 minutes after the tour.
Yeah,
if they don't have that ability, you lose out on that money.
Yeah. I mean, they've had their tour, they've had a drink or two, and they're ready to go. But then you send them off and hope the next time they go to the ABC store, they remember to look for you on the North Carolina shelf. And so North Carolina is not the friendliest state in that sense for distilleries, which is funny because breweries are hardly using any actual North Carolina product. Most of us distilleries are using a very large amount of North Carolina product, grain and sorghum and apples and these things. So in a sense, we're way more local and way more supporting the local economy than the breweries, which are doing really well.
Absolutely. I'm always a big supporter of distilleries for multiple reasons.
Yeah. And not to, I love the breweries too. It's
I do too. I love them all. But yeah, this distilleries, I find it's a very fascinating time. And I think all you guys that are open right now are very much that early adopter. There's those first movers that are getting in before everybody else.
Right.
Because they're already in the middle or maybe towards the end of an explosion of breweries. It seems like there's another brewery opening up every 3 months in Charlotte, where distilleries have just kind of, there's very small, limited amount, but, I'm a big fan of like going on the tours when I go through Kentucky and stuff like that. So I'd like to have that here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, and there's plenty of growth and plenty of opportunities because the thought process is more jobs, more opportunities, more money for the state. And like you said, you're making stuff that's grown locally.
Yeah.
So, as far as the wine goes, it seems like you guys, your line is much sweeter wines.
Well, we should do a tasting. We do some pretty unique styles. I think they're fairly different than what anyone else is doing in the state.
Okay, what type of styles are you doing?
So our specialty is fortified wines, where I actually distill a brandy from the base wine and then add that back to the wine. So it brings the alcohol content up. We've got wines anywhere from 15 to 18%. And what that does is it actually cuts the sweetness back a little bit. So like we have a port style wine, which has some sweetness to it, but it's like a young ruby port style wine. So it is a nice after dinner sweetness, but it also works really well even just with a meal or something. A lot of folks are surprised. Even our Scuppernong wine, which has been getting a lot of attention lately, it's a great mixer. It's got a higher alcohol, and I find that when I add that Scuppernong brandy to the Scuppernong wine, it cuts the sweetness and it really boosts the flavor of that grape, which is a just super interesting grape, that Scuppernong that grows wild around here, basically. So it makes it a little more versatile. I think folks are kind of surprised when they actually try it. We just did a tasting with I think he's the only master sommelier here in North Carolina, and he's just all about our Scuppernong wine now, which to me is a pretty big deal.
Wow, that is fantastic. Now, as far as like the laws with that, they can buy wine at the end of they can bottle here, correct?
Yeah. So we do the tours. We have the wines are all for sale here. We sell them, and then we can sell them directly to the restaurants and the wine shops and all that.
Okay. And as far as distribution, you do that yourself. You don't have to send that to one particular place.
Currently, yes. Currently, we're self-distributed. So we're pretty much from Asheville to Wilmington. The majority of it's all around here in the Triangle.
Okay.
We actually haven't even touched Charlotte yet. We haven't even
I haven't seen it on the shelves yet. So I've been kind of keeping my eye out for that.
Charlotte's, I'm sending Kevin out there soon.
Okay.
He's going to have to camp out in Charlotte, I think, for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, just knock on some doors.
Yeah.
But as far as how you make your wine, where are you getting most of your produce for that?
Yeah, so the grapes are all coming from Andy. Andy's vineyard is called Benjamin Vineyards in Saxbaha. So he's growing all the grapes there. He's been doing that for about, 12 or 14 years up there. He's providing all the grapes for the Ferris, the two-step, the Scuppernong. And then we have an apple wine and a peach wine. And we're about to do a blackberry wine as well. And those all, the apples all come from Hendersonville. The peaches come from the Sandhills, and we buy some from South Carolina. And the blackberries, they're coming from North Carolina and Virginia farmers.
Okay. Now, we've got some wine in these barrels behind us.
Yeah,
right
we're
now.
in the wine room now.
Now, how long before this wine ends up in a bottle and then on the shelf?
Yeah, so this right here, this is an apple wine,
Okay.
and this was apples harvested last fall and then fermented over the winter. They went into the barrel in early winter.
This past winter.
This past winter.
Okay.
And we're going to do the first bottling of this actually next week. So that'll be, about 6 months in barrel.
Okay.
And it can age. I'll probably bottle maybe 3 of these barrels, and I've got several more that I'll just keep aging. So since they're fortified, they can age for longer periods in the barrel. I've got some of our two-step wine up on the top shelf that's been in there about a year now. We've only been in production for about a year and a half now.
Okay. So, the brewing and the wineries and the distilling process, this process right here is the process that seemed like this would scare me the most.
The aging?
The aging. Because anything can happen during this time.
Right.
And you've lost this entire barrel. Let's say you lose this barrel. Like how many bottles of wine?
Let's not say we lose this barrel.
Yeah. Let's say there's a barrel across the street
Sure.
in somebody else's cellar. Let's say they lose that bottle. I mean that
Yeah.
that barrel. How many are they talking?
This is about 30 cases of wine.
Okay.
32 cases, I think, generally. That would suck. We've been lucky so far, or at least our methods have paid off so far.
Now, what methods do you do to ensure that doesn't happen?
So we're using used bourbon barrels, which is kind of unique for a wine. Wine barrels are typically toasted, whereas these are charred, and they've actually had bourbon in them. And when I get them in, I do a sulfite rinse of the barrel to make sure that there's no wild yeast or anything going on in there. And then, once the wine goes in, because it is a higher alcohol, that helps as well. It makes it a little more stable. And you're just making sure that the barrels stay topped off so there's not a lot of air head space and ability for the wine to oxidize or just go bad, basically. Then you just have to check them every once in a while, make sure they're doing all right, make sure we do use sulfites in our wine. We keep them as low as we can, but you just keep checking on those and make sure that everything's staying good and healthy.
Now, when you say you check on them, what are you checking on? Just like
I'll pull a sample out. I've got a wine thief. Stick that in. Pull a small cup out. Smell it. Look at it. I can check the sulfite level on it. It's kind of what you do.
What's a common problem that would come up that you can probably fix pretty easily?
Well, you would get, if you're starting to get oxidation from a leaky barrel or too much headspace in there, then if you've got sulfite levels decent, then that might help you. But there's not much you can do once it starts to go. If you're getting a wild bacteria or wild yeast, I mean, there's not a whole lot you can really do.
So it really is just what's in the barrel. You've crossed your fingers and you keep them that way for a couple months.
Yeah. I mean, if it yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, just hope for the best, I guess.
Right.
Now, when it's time to bottle everything up, do you got like an assembly line, or how do you do that? How many people are bottling these things at a time?
We're a pretty small company. Like on staff, it's myself in running the distillery. Rose works with me part-time in here, and then I've got 2 salespeople, one running the tasting room and one doing the outside. So when it comes time to bottle, I'll usually pull 3 to 4 barrels. And that's about 60 to 80 cases. And do that. I'm doing that every couple months, depending on which wine it is. And we pull in a couple extra folks, and 4-person, 5-person bottling party. It takes 6 hours or so to bottle 60 to 80 cases.
Okay.
It's a fun day.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
You probably get volunteers to come in for a bottle or two.
Yeah, luckily I've started paying. I did some volunteer bottling at first, but I hate to rely on volunteers for a for-profit company.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Understand.
buy them lunch and treat them nice.
Exactly, because it's gonna be a long day.
Yeah.
But anyways, your products and stuff like that, when you get them all bottled up and ready to go, and where's it going? But anyways, what are the right now? You're doing brandy and molasses as far as the distilleries right now.
Yeah, we've got the sorghum rum. It's called molasses, and the apple brandy.
Okay. Now, any plans for it to distill anything else, or is it mostly just those two on the distilling?
No, we've got, in barrel right now I have 2 types of sugarcane rum. I have one that's made, it's an amber rum aging. It's been in the barrel almost a year now. We're probably going to be bottling in the next few months. That's the amber rum. It's made from a panela sugar, which is this is probably the furthest ingredient that we use, and it's an organic cane sugar from Colombia. And so what they do is they press that cane and just evaporate the juice off of it. So you get this really thick brown sugar. It's super flavorful. It's not a molasses, which has been more industrially treated, and a lot of the sugar's been removed from. So it's a very full sugar, really nice rum. Then I've also got a rum agricole, which is a kind of unique style of rum. It started in Martinique and some of the Caribbean islands where in the 1800s, I think they lost their ability to export molasses. So they they were French colonies, and they started to work with the French cognac distillers, and they would actually ferment the fresh pressed sugarcane juice. And this is a fairly wild fermentation. It gets a lot of just really interesting, just kind of crazy flavors. And that really intrigued me. So I found a sugarcane grower about 100 miles south of here. It's probably almost as far north as you can grow sugarcane down in South Carolina. And just got, on pressing day, I went down there, picked up a couple of totes of sugarcane juice and fermented that away. Got some really nice results. And just aging those for now. I'm going to be doing some more of that this year. Like I was telling you earlier, a lot of these products are very harvest-based. So it's not something I can just pick up any time of the year I want. I've got to kind of grab them when they're available.
Is there any things you're kind of keeping an eye out for? Because like I said, it does take some time to get it harvested and everything. Is there anything you're kind of keeping an eye on? Like, I'd like to try that, or, maybe if things work out, I'll do this. Yeah,
I've, brandies are another real interest of mine. And so, we've done the apple brandy, and that's turned out really nice. I've experimented with a pawpaw brandy, which is a native fruit from down here that's kind of a little bit rare. Made some amazing brandy from it, but it was extremely expensive because there's nobody growing this in any sort of large scale. But I did a little bit of a peach brandy this year. I would like to do more of that. just working with the fruits around here. I've started to talk to some blackberry and blueberry growers and could experiment with that. But we're not going to expand the product line that giant, at least until we can do more sales out of the tasting room.
Yeah, because how long have you been, just bringing product out of this location?
We got our permits in January of 2014.
Okay.
And so we've been in production since then. We released our first wine in June of last year, and our first spirits in late March of this year.
Okay, so you're just getting your products rolling out right about now,
right,
for the last year. So it's more important to build up a brand and get everything going, I imagine.
Right. Yeah, we are. We're working hard on a pepper vodka that we plan to release this fall, winter. So I'm busy sourcing peppers right now and trying to put the final touches on this recipe and hopefully have that out before Christmas.
Okay. Well, with everything that you got going on, I should ask this question at the front, but it probably will wrap into everything, as we talked about wines, we've talked about brandies, we've talked about rum, and now you're talking about vodka. the name Fair Game Beverage Company,
right?
How did that come about? Why did that name? I get the beverage company, because you got so many different things, but where does the Fair Game part come into play?
It's funny, when we first started, the business plan was Devil's Distillery, and that kind of seemed fun and funny. And then the more we realized that that wasn't really the image that we portray. We're not really tough, mean people or tricky or whatever.
And you don't need an angry devil on every one of your bottles.
Right. So we were all right, we need to do something that portrays us more. And I've always... Actually, do you know that show Carnival? It was on HBO years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, for some reason, yes. I do know exactly what you're talking
about.
Yes.
I loved the imagery from that show. And so I was thinking of this sort of Depression era harvest festival, harvest fair type of thing. And that kind of ties into both our connection with the farmers and agriculture, and also just the fact that we love having a great time throwing a party. And the fair is kind of the time to come down at the end of the harvest season and celebrate. So I think Fair Game worked out for that, and it gives us a lot of room to come up with fun product names and imagery and all of that. So Fair Game, I think it fits really nice with what we're doing.
Okay, because I see that in your wine bottles. It's kind of the imagery of that, as well as your brandy bottles, as well as just kind of that almost hand, drawn-ish kind of designs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And who does some of those that artwork for
we worked with a company called Good South out of Raleigh, a young couple, and they just took our ideas and made up some great artwork for it. So we've got a lot of compliments on the labels.
Okay. All right. Now coming to the fall, as far as you're doing stuff with your tasting room and getting people out here, what are some upcoming events that we can let people know about? This will probably come out in October and stuff like that.
So everyone will have missed the Pirate Bash that we're throwing on National Talk Like a Pirate Day next September 19th. But they'll have to come back next year because we'll do it every year.
Okay.
But coming up in October, we've got the Pepper Festival, which is a big event that we do with the Abundance Foundation up in North Pittsboro. We're going to be doing a tap takeover with Southern Pines Brewing on October 3rd. And beginning, as I said, October 1, you'll be able to actually buy bottles of liquor at the distillery. So we're going to be doing some more events around that. We've got Four Saints Brewing Company from Ashboro's coming in, I think, first Saturday in November for a tap takeover. So we'll kind of be pairing with them. And you're just gonna have to check the calendar. I think we're scheduled for October
as far as the
right
Christmas
now.
season, because obviously that's a big time for alcohol. Is
right.
The Christmas season.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing more events. I can't tell you exactly what or when, but we've had last year we did a great. We brought in a couple local cheesemakers and did that. We also had an art bazaar right before the holidays. So we do some fun events out here. We've got a really nice space for it. So. The calendar is sort of forming as we speak, and by the time this comes out, you can check our website, and it'll be up there.
Okay, well, what is the website information?
That's fairgamebeverage.com.
Okay, and then Instagram?
We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. We have fun with all those, so it's kind of an interesting feed, so definitely check us out on the social medias.
Okay. All right, well, Chris, is there anything that I've glazed over that you want to let people know about Fair Game Beverage Company?
We have a lot of fun down here in the tasting room. We've actually, to take the beverage company to its ultimate conclusion, we actually have beer on tap. So you're welcome to come on down and not just taste the wine and the spirits. You can get a glass of wine or a wine cocktail, and now you can actually have some pretty awesome local craft beer.
Yeah, because you've got Full Steam, you've got Southern Pines, and then I believe
Haw River Haw River ales, farmhouse ales, and Four Saints, I think, on tap now. But that changes pretty frequently, so there's always something good.
There's always something new, but it just kind of completes the whole spectrum. You get local beer, you've got local wine and local distilled products and brandy, and of course rums.
Yeah, so as long as you can make it down to Lorax Lane and not turn around and think you're heading out into the woods, you're going to find a pretty good.
But obviously, there's plenty of signs saying keep going, just keep going, and,
right?
Yeah, and just don't pay no attention to these gates as well. Just go on through. It's a friendly environment.
Yeah.
So,
and we got lots of booze for you.
All right. there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Exactly.
So, anyways, Chris, thank you for taking so much time out of your day to talk to me today. So,
no problem.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for asking.